I need a folder because I have one in the dorm. I don't want with the yes, a folder.
Oh, you're so cute. So what page is?
Yes, I have one like the Simcha Bracha I have, but I don't use anymore. So
If you want.
yes, okay. Remember me in the dorm. I'll give you.
Brachas Simcha. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Fernanda. That's Leah. Leah Brinstein. Good morning, Leah.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Okay. So the name on your phone is Fernanda.
Yes, it is my real name. And Leah is my Jewish name.
No. Leah is real name. Leah is the mother of the Jewish people.
Yeah.
My great grandmother. That's Leah. Okay, we're on page 96. Just doing a little review and moving on quickly. Page 96. Everybody got the place? Open your books, please. Okay, page 96 at the first Hebrew lines. The fish made Torah melubeshes, the nefesh adam. Since when we speak about knowing what's in the Torah, since you know it, is enclosed in your soul, becomes a garment for your soul and for your intellect, and it is encompassed within them.
There's no secretary, so I'm watching and I can't hear.
Oh, really?
So I'm watching the girls come in.
Really?
Yeah.
Is Mrs. Yaffe sick also?
I don't know, maybe.
Okay. So since the Torah becomes something that's enclosed within us spiritually, it's called, so to speak, spiritually, it's called food. Maza, for food is, the word for food is mazoin. Mazoin and lechem. You know, lechem is bread. Moitzi lechem in aretz. Mazoin, it's called mazoin hanefesh. Food for the soul in this world. And we're going to, as we saw yesterday, it's also food for the soul in the world to come. We have to learn very carefully in this world so that we'll have it with us in the world to come. You're not going to take anything else with you. Your wardrobe, your shoes, your house, your car, your bungalow, your cabana. Don't take anything with you. But your Torah you could take with you. So therefore the Torah is called bread and nourishment for the soul. Just like food, physical food. Zanes haguf, it nourishes the body. But there's a one catch. You have to eat it. You have to take it into your system. It has to come into your insides, your digestive system, and in your digestive system, it becomes transformed, into flesh and blood, just like the rest of your body is flesh and blood. And then the result is a person lives and survives, is sustained. This is obvious. Now applying this to the Torah, we see the same thing. So the Rebbe tells us here, the knowledge of Torah that we grasp and comprehend, the Nefesh Adam in our soul, and now there are the different categories that the steps of learning. Shaloimeda is number one, you learned it. Heitev, you learned it well, okay? Now you learned this chapter very well. You could explain it to your parents, your brothers and sisters, your friends. Shaloim de Heitev. You learned it better than well. Be'itu iyun. You learned it in depth. You did research and you understood many, many more things about it.
Good morning, Rabbi. How are you?
Oh, Malcolm, welcome.
I have to leave.
Where
My
are
flight's
you,
about to take
Malcolm?
off. I'm on the plane getting ready to go to Florida.
You see, well, but do up your seatbelt there.
Don't worry, I have the hot pig sitter.
Yes, there you go. We're on page 96, Malcolm.
All right, I have to
So
go.
a person,
Bye.
and the iyun means he learns it with concentration in great depth. V'hoyu v'nitfesas b'sichlei, until it is grasped in your mind. To you, like now it's hard to separate yourself from this idea. It's on your mind the whole time. You can't forget about it, just like we can't forget about you, Malka. And the fifth level, it not only it becomes attached to you, it becomes part of you. Part of you is not attached anymore. We don't say that your nose is attached to you. It's you. I walk with my children to shul on Shabbos. They hold on to my little children or grandchildren, hold on to my finger. Who are they holding on to? Tati. Not holding. Who are you holding on? I'm holding on to a finger. No, you're not holding on to a finger. You're holding on to Tati or to Zaidi. So the Torah becomes part of you. When you get to that fifth level of the Torah, and we showed, by the way, that these 5 levels, the Alter Rebbe here uses 5 expressions. Why did he use 5 expressions? I don't know. My guess is, my hunch is that the 5 expressions correspond to 5 levels of the soul. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida. And you have to learn the Torah on all 5 levels of the Torah, which is Pshat, Remez, Drush, the simple level, the hinted level, the homiletical level, and the mystical level, which is Kabbalah, Soid. These correspond to the 4 levels of the soul, but then there's the Yechida, which is the 5th level. That's the essence of them all. The 5th level is this essence, essential level. The essence of, and that corresponds to the essence of the soul. And this is Brianna, welcome. Glad to have you here. Brianna. Okay. So when you get to that level that you know all the 4 levels of the Torah with all the 5 levels of knowledge, of understanding, then the Torah becomes life for you, gives you energy. You don't need to eat. And this is, by the way, another point. I never saw this written, but I'm sure it's written somewhere because it's so obvious that Jewish people thirst for God. That's the way you are. That's how you're made. Jewish people want to be connected with God. So we have Torah, which is food, and mitzvahs, which are called garments. What happens if a person doesn't have Torah and mitzvahs? What's going to happen to this desire for food and garments? You're going to shop for physical garments. You're going to have 150 pairs of shoes. And you won't want to miss the latest bargain, latest winter sale at Bloomingdale's. And also, like my mother, Oleh Shalom, used to say, I never should have had that Viennese table. She was always trying not to gain weight. I never should have had it. So your desire for Hashem, for Torah, which is compared to food, becomes transferred to a physical desire for food. You know, the boy had a bar mitzvah. They made a chopped liver statue for the reception. Whereas righteous people, they hardly eat. They hardly eat. They don't eat much, and they don't seem weak. On the contrary, the Rebbe hardly ate, and he was tremendously strong, powerful individual. Okay, so in the same way that the food becomes a life within you, the Torah becomes a life within you. How does the Torah become your life? Because the Torah is the wisdom of Hashem, and Hashem is the source of life. So you're connected with the source of life, and it gives you life and energy. And this is what David HaMelech says in his wisdom, Hashem, in praise of Hashem, Hashem, your Torah is in my intestines, in my kishkas. Intestines are where physical food gets transformed into flesh and blood, right? And the dross, like the pulp of the carrots we spoke about yesterday, that gets passed out through the large intestine. And similarly in Gan Eden, moving down page 97 to the bottom, in Gan Eden, when the soul, after 120 years here, goes to spend some time in Gan Eden until Techias HaMeisim, when it will be reunited with the body, life never dies by definition. Life doesn't die. What do we call life? We call life that when the soul is connected to the body, but the soul doesn't die. Whereas the body is physical, the body could decay, but the soul can't decay. So where does the soul go after 120 years? It goes to Gan Eden. Maybe you're not ready to go there quite yet. You have to get cleaned up a bit. Have to go to the cleaners on Kingston Avenue and get cleaned up. And then you go to Gan Eden once you're clean and spotless. So what nourishes the soul in Gan Eden? These classes. What we learn and what we teach other people becomes food for our neshama in the world to come. And the mitzvahs that you do, if you go on Mivtzoyim on Friday afternoon, you give out some candlesticks to some ladies, say, oh, darling, you remind me of my mother. You remind me of my granddaughter. You're so lovely. Thank you so much. Those mitzvahs become your garments. Garments for the soul in the world to come. With the proviso, of course, that you did it for the sake of being connected to Hashem. You did it for the sake of Hashem. So those are two levels. You did it for the sake of Hashem is the real level, and you did it for the sake of being connected to Hashem is almost the real level, but there's a hint of what you want that limits it, because that is sort of an enlightened selfishness. That I know that I'm going to have a great benefit from it. But if you're learning and doing mitzvahs in order to get a good job, or in order to get a good shidduch, in order to get the respect from people, or in order to be honored at the dinner, the Mochon Yadus dinner, they're going to give you a plaque and someone's going to get up and read a speech about you. And then you're going to get up and read a speech yourself and everybody's going to listen. Oh, it's very nice. That's not called for the sake of Hashem. Even there have been people, plenty of people, who are not frum, but they love learning Torah. I remember hearing from one of my teachers, early teacher, a story about a person in Seattle. He was still a bacher, my teacher. When he was still a bacher, he was one of the early ones to go on Mecca Shlichus. There was no Shlich in Seattle at that time. And these young men who went out, they still go out every summer. They meet people, and that prepares the way for a young Chabad person to come out as a Shliach and to become a Rav, and to give a boost to the Yiddishkeit in the city and bring more people back under the wings of the Shekhinah. Good morning, Anna. So there was this, in Seattle, there was this person that they met that he was not from. He was not from, he used to smoke on Shabbos. He used to smoke. Well, you're not allowed to make a fire on Shabbos, right? He would smoke, which is forbidden. Oh, here is Sarah. I see Sarah just appeared. Sarah Buznose from Ukraine. Good morning, Sarah. And he would smoke and he would give a shir Talmud. He would give a shir Talmud while he was smoking on Shabbos. And I remember it was Rabbi Sudak told me the story. They tried to argue with him and point out to him, the contradiction in his ways that but he loved Torah. He loved learning Torah because just the pleasure he had. It's very exciting intellectually to learn Torah. It's much more stimulating than any knowledge. And he loved learning Torah. He couldn't stop. But on the other hand, he wasn't frum. He was lacking in Yiras Shamayim. And Rabbi Sudak told us that he tried to argue with him, that he should bring his behavior into line with his knowledge. And he couldn't get through to him. He couldn't win because the man was very, very smart and very clever and very learned in Torah. He couldn't out-argue him. So finally just said to him, Mister, how did you fall so low? And that got through to him. It wasn't an intellectual argument. It was an emotional argument. You have a Torah background. You grew up as a Yiras Shamayim. You went through a Holocaust, but how did you give up your Yiras Shamayim? How do you fall so low? And he began to cry. Boys, he says, you don't know. And Mitzvah Hashem, it brought him back. But that's another example of how a person can even learn Torah not for the right reason. Learn Torah and love learning Torah and not for the right reason. So I've met also in my travels, I've met people, Reform rabbis, and conservative rabbis who really know Torah, but they sold out to get a good job. If I'm going to become a rabbi in a frum shul, I'm not going to have a salary. I'm going to have to work, and I'm not going to have a big congregation. I could be a conservative rabbi. I could be a reform rabbi. I'm going to have a synagogue. I'm going to have 300, 400 people every Shabbos. I'm going to get a beautiful house to live in. I'm going to get a car, and my children are going to be respected. That's not learning for the right reason. That's using the Torah. So that's not really good for the neshama after 120 years. Either 300, 400 people every Shabbos are never the same people. Depends whose bar mitzvah it is. So all the friends come for the bar mitzvah, but they're not there because it's Shabbos. Well, to a certain degree, deep down, they're Jewish, they're connected to Hashem, they are coming because it's Shabbos. But the external reason is they're coming because it's a social thing that you do. You go to your neighbor's bar mitzvah and he comes to your bar mitzvah. And the rest of the times you go golfing. Okay, but so if the Torah is learned lishma for the right reason, because it's Hashem's Torah, or on a lower level, just because you want to be connected to Hashem, and this is the greatest way to be connected to Hashem, then the Torah will be a garment for you, will be a beautiful set of clothes for you in the world to come, and will be food to nourish your soul in the world to come. Yes. Ariel.
Are there from rabbis who do go to conservative shows or reform shows?
Yes.
So is there, I mean, what is it mindset that they want a salary, or are they thinking, oh, if I go to this place, maybe I can get people to grow, or is it because like they're on a salary? So
you're going to have to deal with
people
every single person. Hashem is a good bookkeeper. We know we have bookkeepers in businesses. They keep the book straight. Hashem is a spiritual bookkeeper. Deep down inside, the motives of every Jewish person is doing it for the right reason. But on the outside, a person can be tainted and do things for the wrong reason.
But they think it's the right reason.
They convince themselves, they rationalize. I was very friendly, I still am, with a person. He was a singer. You heard of Dudu Fisher? He played Fiddler on the Roof. On Broadway, they didn't play on Shabbos because of him. He was a frum guy. Okay. So his sister is married to my friend, who is also a singer. He's a chazan in a shul. He's a chazan in a conservative shul. And he used to bring me down to teach the people in his community. And he made Balei Tshuva. He brought people. One of the frum members of our community started out coming to his the shir in his house. And he's a firm believer in the Rebbe, committed, and a frum guy, but this is his parnasa. Then there's another person. He was a reform rabbi. Okay, so here, to a certain degree, I can't judge anybody. But by and large, if a person is a Yireh Shamayim, he's not going to be a reform or a conservative rabbi. And if he's going to say, well, I will be makar of people, I will bring them close to Torah, that doesn't work. We're going to learn about that in chapter 25. If we get there, that's called, I'm going to sin now and I'll do tshuva later. You never get a chance to do tshuva because of the fact that I can do tshuva later, that's my excuse for not being from now. Now, my friend who was the chazan, I'm sure that he was very careful not to break Shabbos. But if they put a microphone in the synagogue and he speaks into the microphone, he is breaking Shabbos. And by being the rabbi there, well, he was actually the cantor, but by being the rabbi in such a shul, now the rabbi in that shul was a very nice person. And he certainly helped the community that they should maintain their level of involvement in Judaism. And he gave classes in Torah and so on. But he justified people driving to shul and not keeping Shabbos because he was the rabbi. If it's good enough for the rabbi, it's good. When I was growing up, the rabbi in my synagogue used to encourage people to come to shul on Saturday morning, and he would play golf with them in the afternoon, and he was a good golfer. It's a sellout. And he justified it and rationalized away. oh, there's Sarah Milligan. Now there are exceptional cases. There are cases where the Rebbe actually told people to be in a Reform or conservative synagogue, but not because they went there in the first place. They didn't go there in order to bring people close to Torah. They went there because they believed in the Torah on the level that they were on, and they thought that was the right level. But a person is a Yireh Shamayim and he's a yeshiva student who knows Torah, and a priori or a fortiori, I think the expression is, with a forethought, he goes to this synagogue because he's going to get a house and a car and he's going to have respect of the community. That's not learning for its own sake. However, now there was a guy, he was a Reform rabbi, he was an intellectual, he's a very, very nice person, and he was fascinated by mysticism and by Hasidism, and he interviewed, I think, like 9 Hasidic rebbes, and the 9th was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And because of that, he became frum. He started putting on tefillin, and he started keeping Shabbos. And he said to the Rebbe that I can't continue as a Reform rabbi. The Rebbe said, no, you have to continue your synagogue. You have to stay there. He said, but why should I have to stay there? He said, because if you leave, someone else is going to come and they'll be on a much lower level spiritually. They'll keep less Torah and mitzvahs. Whereas your influence will encourage them to keep more Torah and mitzvahs and to learn more Torah. So that's why you're there. So here it was uncomfortable for him. Here it wasn't anymore that he was doing it for himself. He was doing it entirely for Hashem. He didn't want to be there. So if you don't want to be there and you do it for Hashem, then it could be considered, yes, that you're really doing it lishma, because you don't want to be there. Finally, when he came to the age of retirement, I don't know, 70 or whatever, he retired. So the Rebbe said to him, okay, now you have to reveal yourself. And they made him a dinner, and he made it sweet. He says, listen, my dear friends, he said, and you can see this online. I have to make a confession to you that I'm really not a Reform rabbi anymore. I am not Reform. I keep Sabbath and I keep holidays according to the Torah. And they said, that's okay, Rabbi. We knew that all along, but we love you. And I had a friend who I met him when I was in yeshiva, and he had come to Yiddishkeit through meditation, through transcendental meditation. And he came to Yiddishkeit and he became very scholarly from South Africa, from a very fine family in South Africa. I'm sure they were freaking out when he was doing his transcendental meditation in the Far East, whatever. And he asked the Rebbe if he should undertake this as a shlichus, to go to bring, because there were so many Jews that were involved. They said, don't you stay away from it with a 10-foot pole. Because if you go there, even though you think you're going to be makar of them, they will be re-makar of you. You will fall back into it. Like a person who is alcoholic, he gets clean, but he cannot hang around with alcoholics because it's too strong a temptation for him. The Rebbe said, you're absolutely forbidden to go there. And there's another person that I know, very popular, well-known person, I know she's online, Miriam Rhodes. She told me that she was in Tibet. She was doing meditation in Tibet in the mountains with the big guru. And she was translating documents into English from the Tibetan, whatever it is they speak. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story. What I heard it in the sukkah. We happen to eat in the same sukkah when you're so shy. She told her story there, so that's how I know it. Anyway, she came back to New York for a certain reason, I think, her father's health. And her guru had a meditation center in Manhattan. So she went there and she asked him, is it possible for a person to continue? She was very high up and she said, can a person be Jewish and also proceed in this as a path of life, spiritual path in life? And he, the nephew of the guru, said, well, I hope so, because most of the people here are Jewish. So for her, it was forbidden to go there to try to be makar of them. You don't okay. But only if you don't want to be there. The Rebbe says, no, you should stay there, because if you leave, there's going to be a woman rabbi who's going to allow them to do all kinds of other things. She's going to encourage women to put on tefillin and mixed. Don't go. You stay there and keep it the way it is. Keep it at least on this level and improve it. Okay. So Torah that we learned lishma, that's what this digression was about, doing things for the sake of Hashem and not doing things for the sake of the reward that you're going to get for it, which could be a house and a car and honor and position in the community and respected. And you write a column, it'll be syndicated in all the Reform newspapers, all the Reform synagogues in America will syndicate your column, you'll be famous. That's not for the sake of Hashem. Turn the page, 98. So if a person learns Torah and does mitzvahs for Hashem, each person according to his intellectual ability, then it becomes food and clothing for the world to come. Page 98, in the middle of the line. Vahamose, now in brackets. Now we move more into mystical discussion. Mozain, Yibechinas or Panimi, since food is something you take within your system, so now we're talking not about physical food, but about inspiration, godly inspiration, which is compared to light. And there's an external kind of a light, and there's an inner light. So food is like an inner light within, just like food is nourishment within your body. So the Torah is like an inner light. It's called an or panimi in the nefesh. And mitzvahs are things that you don't take them. You can't learn. Knowing Torah is like food, but doing mitzvahs, that's not something you can eat. You can't eat the candle that you light. You can only do it. So therefore, mitzvahs are called garments because they are external. The mitzvahs are the will of God. So the will of God is like a light. That encompasses you, because when you're doing a mitzvah, it's like the dancer doing a dance. You're in the dance, and you're in the dance. You're part of the dance. So when you're doing mitzvahs, you're within the will of God. That the will of God is like a garment, so to speak, and you're wearing that garment. So we see that Torah is like food and mitzvahs are like garments. Speaking now on the level of the light of Hashem, because the Torah is the light of Hashem expressed in wisdom, and mitzvahs are the light of Hashem expressed in his will. These are the mitzvahs are the will of God. And there are debates in the Torah the whole time, which is higher, which is better, which is more important for me, doing mitzvahs or learning Torah. It's a big debate in the Torah, and there are many sides to this debate. We're going to touch it a little bit now. So therefore, our sages teach us of blessed memory. So in this debate, the sages said that learning Torah weighs against doing all the mitzvahs, because you can't do mitzvahs if you don't learn Torah. So which is greater? The conclusion is really mitzvahs are greater, because which is great, which is a more greater power in you, your desire, your willpower, or your knowledge? Which is greater? Your willpower. Because if you want to be knowledgeable, you'll become knowledgeable, because your willpower will drive you to become smart, to become knowledgeable. But not always does knowledge push a person to do the right thing. A person can know Torah and still learn it for the wrong reasons. Like the Rebbe Maharash, in his time, the Rebbe, fourth Rebbe Shmuel, they used to learn Hasidus. Hasidus is godliness. They would learn Hasidus, and at one point they started serving tea and biscuits. He said, what do you, tea and biscuits or tea and mezainis is materialism. You have to learn Torah for Hashem's sake, not for the tea and the biscuits. So they stopped, they cut out the tea and the biscuits, and people stopped coming. He said, bring back the tea and the biscuits. Let them learn for the wrong reason, but let them learn. So which is greater? The mitzvahs are really greater, because mitzvahs are the willpower of a person. Nothing can stand before the willpower of a person. So mitzvahs are really greater than Torah, because Torah is something that's internal, but mitzvahs are from a higher level. They're so high you can't internalize them. So the sages say, yes, but if I don't have Torah, I'm not going to do mitzvahs. So even though mitzvahs are greater, that's the conclusion of the Talmud. Even though mitzvahs are greater, we're going to say the Torah is greater. This Rabbi Akiva says this, Torah is greater because through learning Torah, you get to do the mitzvahs. That teaches you how to do mitzvahs. Okay, but now we're looking at it from the point of view of mysticism. The Torah is called an inner light, and mitzvahs are called garments. So for this reason, they said that learning Torah is weighs against, we put them in the scale, learning Torah will weigh against all the mitzvahs. Why? Page 98. Lefisha ha-mitzvahs hein levushim, because mitzvahs are garments, right? We just said that. And the Torah is nourishment, is food for the soul. But guess what? Torah is also a garment. So Torah wins in the stretch, because Torah is also a mitzvah. So it has both qualities to it. When is Torah? How can Torah be a mitzvah? So the bottom of page 98, because the Torah encloses itself when you learn Torah with concentration, be'iyuna, or when you learn it not with concentration, or even more so, if you learn it just like going through the motions, like for instance, Friday before Shabbos, we read through the whole parsha. So we're not really thinking deeply about it. We're just saying the words to be familiar with the words. So what happens then? Then our breath and our tongue and our lips and our teeth are all involved in saying the words of Torah. So in that sense, the Torah becomes a garment for our power of speech. So if the Torah is a garment, it's like it's on the same level as other mitzvahs, but it's also an inner light because it's the wisdom and the will of Hashem. So therefore, Torah can weigh against all the other mitzvahs. We conclude with this chapter 5 and move on tomorrow morning to chapter 6. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and good Shabbos. I hope we'll see you tomorrow morning again. Fernanda and Leah and Sarah Beznos and Sarah Milligan. Thank you for joining us on the Zoom. Chaim. Who's going to remind me to take my hat? My hat is downstairs. Nefesh kol chai baruch chei ha'elamim. Girls, always try to say a bracha before you get up when you have something to eat. But if you didn't, you can still say it, even though you're not sitting in the same place. That's also a debate in the Gemara. One opinion says, no, you have to go back. It tells a story about a certain sage that the day he was on a caravan. They were going through the desert. He was alone, traveled together with a bunch of people. And he wanted to eat. So wash and ate. And then the leader of the caravan said, "You got to continue." I didn't. And so the question and the officer, I didn't finish. How am I going to be able to finish? There's nothing stopping wait for me. He started speaking to the leader of the Ayara, the party. I got to go back. Why do I have to go back? I had a golden statue that they got. And I forgot it. It's gold. I have to go back and get it. Okay, it's gold. Go back and get it. He was suspicious. So he went back and he finished. And the leader of the groups, very suspicious, said, okay, let's see that golden dove. I forget now what he had in his hands. He was really in the spot now. The guy was going to very strict with him, very harsh with him, maybe even attack him physically. He opened his hand and a dove flew out. So that's according to the opinion that you have to say a blessing in the place where you ate. But that's not the halakha that you can say a blessing. Hashem is everywhere. You can say the blessing wherever you remember to say it. As long as it's not too far away and too much of a too much time didn't go by.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. I think we left it open on purpose. I don't know. Are you cold?